Hi, this video is about a personal open source pet project that I've been working on. It's about budgeting, and I thought I would share it. Maybe someone else might find it useful. So I use a budgeting tool called YNAB to manage my budget. It's a great tool because it helps you plan your money and keep track of what you spend. For example, when I use YNAB, I can create categories, set targets, track investments, and record transactions. So you always know where your money is going. Now, in many countries, YNAB also supports bank integrations, meaning if a charge happens on your account, it can automatically pull that transaction into YNAB. But bank integrations are only available for certain banks, and as far as my situation goes, there aren't any reliable integrations for banks and wallets in Zambia. So I thought of a solution, right? Because my challenge was I was always tired of manually entering every single transaction in YNAB. It was time consuming and it was easy to lose track of time, especially if you have a lot of transactions during that day. So I did some research, and yes, some banks and mobile money providers do have APIs for developers, but in reality, it's usually difficult to get access. Then I realized something simple. Even without an API, I always receive an SMS alert whenever a transaction happens. So I thought, why not use those SMS messages as data source to automatically record transactions in YNAB? So I built an open source system, just a simple system that takes those SMS messages and creates a YNAB transaction automatically. Of course, you can use any budgeting software for this. I personally use YNAB. Maybe you use spreadsheets or whatever you use, mobile apps. Yeah. So let me just show you how it looks in YNAB. So as you can see here, if you want to add a transaction, you press add transaction and you enter your details. Now you can imagine if you have a lot of transactions for that week, and there's a lot of transactions, you would end up having to enter each and every one manually, and it's really time consuming. So here is an example of two transactions that recently happened. These were automated transactions based on SMSs. So this is a much better system because you can come here and you remember exactly what transaction it was, because you can read the memo and you can see information about that transaction. And if that SMS had more information, you could even see the payee and the category that that transaction is for, and you can easily record it. So I built this simple open source tool which works with Supabase. So first, an SMS comes to your phone from a bank or a mobile provider. So an iOS shortcut is triggered. So in my current setup, it filters for the messages that contain the word ZMW. But this can expand to include any other patterns like kwacha or any other common string that appears in your messages. So the next thing is we have a webhook on Supabase using the Supabase Edge function, which is basically just a cloud function. So it sends the name, the timestamp, and the full SMS of the text message. Then the Edge function uses Gemini AI to do two things. One, it decides if this message is actually a transaction. And two, it extracts the details for that transaction from the message, like the amount, the money, whether it's an in and out, or the pay information. So I used AI here because I feel SMSs are very messy. And the first version of this solution used regex functions, which were not accurate, right? So every message varies by provider, and usually these messages change over time. And some messages include balances, promos, some are just like spam. So if you try to do this entirely with code or regex rules, it becomes fragile. So you either miss some transactions or accidentally import the wrong messages. So AI does a better job at understanding the context and classifying the message in order to extract the right information. So after that, the function routes the transaction to the correct YNAB account based on the sender. For example, Airtel Money, Momo, Absa. It depends on what accounts you've set up in your YNAB account, and this README guides you through how to set that up. And if you prefer to use a different software, maybe you prefer to use a spreadsheet, you can modify this to your liking. So if an SMS has a transaction fee, the system also is able to detect the fees. So I have a diagram here. So for instance, if we receive an SMS, is it a valid request? Yes. We fetch the YNAB categories and payee, and we send the SMS to Gemini AI. So Gemini is able to identify if this is a transaction or if it's just something else, right? So if it's a transaction, we need to determine what type of a transaction it is, right? Is it an inflow or is it an outflow? So based on that, if it's an outflow, we know that there's always going to be some sort of transaction fee. Like for Airtel to Airtel has got certain transaction fees, Airtel to bank, maybe Airtel to another mobile service provider like Zamtel. They all have different charges. So based on that, we'll be able to determine the charge based on the direction if it's an outflow. And as you can see here, we can check we can look up the fee table here. So this fee table is something that I have updated with the current information that I have from testing and from doing research on the internet. Of course, these mobile service providers and banks, they can choose to they can decide to change the pricing, right? So I guess you would have to update that in order to keep up with them. And so based on that, we can then apply the charge, and that would be applied as a separate transaction in your budgeting software. And you can add a category to that. So if you have a category for bank transactions, you can make that for your transactions. So and if you want to run this yourself, the README walks you through the setup to deploy the Edge function on Supabase, set up secrets and webhooks, how to set up YNAB and the budget ID, how to set up Gemini. So as for Gemini, I'm currently using Gemini Flash 2.5. I feel like it's very stable. You could use Gemini 3. I think maybe it would even do a better job. But for this functionality, I feel like Gemini 2.5 Flash is good enough, and it's pretty fast because you want this to be like really fast, right? And so if you use iOS, there's instructions here on how to set up the shortcut, how to create the shortcut, and how to set up the webhook on that end as well. So that's it. This project is really about applying AI to messy, real-world local inputs and integrating it into a workflow I actually use day to day. If you're interested in the project, the repo is public on GitHub, and you can contribute to it, especially for SMS fees and stuff, or anything else that you feel you can add to the project. And thanks for watching.